Hello again, Tennessee supporters of term limits. This is Aaron Duquette, State Director for U.S. Term Limits again. Continuing in our series of videos, talking to our pledge signers of the U.S. Term Limits Resolution for term limits on Congress. And today I have Neal Kerney, who is a candidate running for the state legislature in Tennessee, who is a signer of our pledge. And so I just want to introduce you. Neal, you want to introduce yourself a little bit, talk a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, folks out there. I'm glad to do this. So, like Aaron told you, my name is Neal Kerney. I am running for the Tennessee State House of Representatives in the 3rd District. This is one of those districts that's as far northeast Tennessee as you can get. It's a very rural district, but I would venture to say it's one of the most beautiful legislative districts in all the world. I don't say that with flip it because it is true. You got the mountains of Upper East Tennessee and Johnson County, place called Trade, and then you go up to a place called Rome Mountain in Carter County. It's a very beautiful district, and I have part of Sullivan County. The district is all of Johnson County. It's part of Sullivan, part of Carter. The 3rd State House District, its current state representative is Timothy Hill. However, this office is now becoming open because he's running for Congress. And it's myself and one other gentleman running to replace Representative Hill as the next state representative. There's no Democrats on the ballot, so who wins the primary this August 6th, Thursday, August 6th, and the Republican primary will be the next state representative. And, of course, I'm working hard to make sure that's me.
All right, great. Yeah, thanks, Neal. And so just tell us a little bit about why it is that you support our initiative for term limits on Congress, and what motivated you to sign our pledge.
Well, Aaron, I appreciate the opportunity again, and I do strongly support limiting congressional service through term limits. Mm-hmm. I will support these efforts while serving in the State House. And I believe with congressional term limits, it will benefit the country in many ways, including efforts to curb federal spending and bring new blood to Washington. It's not something that on the surface you think, why we need term limits when we have elections. But the problem is there is something to be said for drain the swamp. For those that don't really understand the intricate details of politics, the power of incumbency is very powerful. And it's very difficult to defeat long-term incumbents, particularly those in Washington, D.C., simply because they have many lobbyists, corporations, etc., that financially contribute to their campaign, and they're able to build up these incumbents, what we would say nest eggs of in their campaign kitty, so to speak. And anytime they're challenged, it's hard to overcome when you go up against a challenger. When you're the challenger and you go up against a incumbent in Congress and they have hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even millions in their campaign account, it's not impossible to defeat them, but it makes it nearly impossible. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. That not saying that there's always that the case, but there's a tendency for that to be more the case with long-term congressmen. And I think fresh blood is always good. Why do we have to have a congressman of 25, 30, 35 years upwards? This is not necessary. I'm a big believer. I think if you've been there 12 years, that's good enough. I mean, when that's 2 U.S. Senate terms is 6 years apiece, 12 years. In the House term limits, I think 12 years is sufficient. And some would even say less than that. But if you're going to make an impact on your constituents back in the congressional district, I think that is plenty of time to do so, be effective, and provide the voters an opportunity to have someone else.
Yeah, it's very good. You hit on a lot of things that we say all the time about term limits. I think I would agree too, right? In the abstract, yeah, sure, we can term limit people by voting them out. So in the abstract, yes, that's conceptually the case on paper. But when you look in practice, how this happens, and you mentioned the reasons. I mean, the incumbency advantage itself is compounded by the network of relationships you have with insider lobbyists. You've got the fundraising, you've got the party connections, the longevity. All of that kind of builds to be exclusive of other people that might mount a serious challenge. And so that's why I like to think of this less as, think of term limits as a campaign for open seat elections. So you said you're running in an open seat, right? And that's more just incidentally. because someone else is moving on to another office. Well, with term limits, you open up that possibility that someone's going to move on to something different. Maybe they go back home. Maybe they run for governor or something else. They go and serve some other way, and it vacates that seat. And we see that bear out even in state level term limits, where when there are open seat elections, there are more candidates that run in the primaries, which drives voter turnout because people feel, oh, I have more choices. When I go to the ballot box, I actually have more the opportunity with term limits, more of an opportunity to vote for who I really want than I do if I don't have term limits, because I'm pretty much prescripted one way or the other. And of course, in our very divided times, with a lot of times the parties being very ideologically divided, people kind of feel force-fed. Here's my one choice. With term limits, you're going to have more of an opportunity for competition at those primary levels,
Well,
and
sure.
that's a good thing.
And I'd like to add, Aaron, let's put this in perspective. I think what you and I collectively are talking about, the systemic problem.
Right.
It is very easy to have knee-jerk reactions to certain words that people think that can be construed as ugly. For example, lobbyists, incumbents. Those words in themselves are not necessarily bad things. All that is part of the political process, and they have a place and a purpose. But what we're talking about is a systemic problem of where you have long-term representatives or senators in Washington, D.C. that are clearly ingrained, entrenched incumbents that are part of the swamp. That is the systemic problem. And these other things, factors, contribute to the problem. And I think on the surface, we can control this greatly, especially the federal spending, the out-of-control federal spending, if we did have a turnover. And that's why I support the congressional term limits.
Yeah, that's great. You can actually see, if you look at the amount of time that people have served in Congress, that actually the less time that they've served in Congress, a lot of times the less likely they are to vote for, debt ceiling increases, that kind of thing. They're actually, if they're disposed to be fiscally responsible when they get into their seat, the more time that they've spent there, the less they hold to that value.
It also falls into the argument, Aaron. You have those that say, well, you have to have someone there for a number of years to have the experience, the credibility, the clout, the power to be able to bring back the money, the gravy to our home district, so to speak. Well, that perhaps is true under the current systemic problem.
Right.
But if we held everyone accountable to the term limits where there is turnover, it creates fresh blood, and it will put everyone on a more even playing field.
Right.
I mean, let me give you an example. I am a lieutenant colonel in the military. I'm back to reserve status in the Tennessee National Guard. I had the privilege last year when I was activated as a battalion commander in the 101st Airborne. But the point is, I was there for a year as a battalion commander activated through the National Guard. Any commander in the military usually is not in a command position at the very most 2 to 3 years. And that's you can be in a command position as little as a year, up to 18 months, up to 2 years. Now, the military has that is part of their design model. And why is the reason for that? Because you have other officers that need command, and you keep the fresh blood always going, and to bring a new, fresh command perspective in a unit with its command climate. And if we had the same commander there forever, it would become stagnant, unhealthy. It would be low morale, have a tendency to lead to corruption. And why do we think that congressmen that cannot happen there? They're not immune to this, and that's clearly what's happening.
Well, if that can happen in the military, how much more so will happen in Congress? It just seems so obvious to me the kind of people that you're working with, right?
Well, the military by design,
right,
not just the United States Army that I'm a part of through the reserve component, but you have all the armed forces, the different branches by design. They keep different slots, different command opportunities. That's part of the officer career progression. These are command positions, and they usually, like I said, only allow it for so many months, and then it's time to move on.
Right.
That's why you see a lot of different movements around in the military. It's called a permanent change of station. There's a reason behind that. There is the reason for the logic, and it is healthy to keep always. And every now and then you have someone that's a bad apple. Well, all the more reason it can be identified, spotted, and quickly corrected. Replace that bad apple and move on with the next one.
Right. No doubt. Well spoken. I think you took all my talking points out of my mouth. I think these are all things that I'm talking about all the time, and it's just so demonstrably true. We thank you so much. We can't get this done. You know, Congress is not going to term limit itself. At
No.
least not maybe without significant pressure from the states by using this method that we're doing here. Maybe they'll see the writing on the wall. I still don't think so. I think they're too arrogant and too, you know, full up in themselves to actually take it seriously. And I think the states are going to have to do it. So we're not going to be able to get it done without, you know, folks like yourself. So, you know, we thank you again for signing our pledge and being, you know, such an articulate and stalwart defender.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I believe in trying to do my part at the grassroots level. I hope to have an opportunity to continue to advocate this and speak as a state representative on the state level for those that are serving in Washington. And I hope that we can start a new generation at the state level, because over time you will have those in the state level that will eventually move out or maybe move up, so to speak. But if we set the standard and adhere to that standard, we can start slowly trying to drain the corrupt swamp, because it's clearly that's the case.
Neal, Kerney, thank you so much for taking time today. And I feel like I could keep talking to you for an hour here. So I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for taking time with us.